Okay guys, this is a video that I originally released around the middle of 2019, so this was just before the 2020 episodes all happened. I was looking at this time for a Black Horseman event to possibly be directly ahead, since I had been saying the years 2020 to 2021 looked like they could be market and food issues. Hello guys, welcome back. I'm super busy right now doing like 12 things at one time, but I had to stop and make a very important video. Have we entered the Black Horseman of the Apocalypse? And I would like your feedback on this if you have any thoughts about it. I'm having this question of the Black Horseman. I think if you guys have watched any of my other prophecy videos, you've probably seen a pattern I've followed. The first 4 seals of Revelation that are descriptions of signs that we will see of the end times beginning. The first 4 seals, starting in chapter 6 of Revelation, are known as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse because horses are described and horsemen are described. The first one is the white horseman. There's a bow and a crown, goes forth conquering and to conquer, which, by the way, guys, I see these first 4 horsemen as preparation of the entire world for the very end time beast and antichrist system, as far as your economics and your politics and your industries. Because the 5th seal describes people being killed for the testimony of God, followed shortly by the 6th seal of great cosmological changes in the heaven. If you match these 2 seals, 5 and 6, with the events in 3 of the Gospels, and you've probably seen this in other prophecy videos I've made if you watch them, but the 5th and 6th seals, if you match them with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, those events of the end times, it really looks like the chronology there is a great tribulation, and then it uses the words immediately after that tribulation or immediately after the days of that tribulation, and I'm paraphrasing, but you can tell it's chronology. First is a tribulation, the very next things are these signs of the sun and moon changing and angels collecting people from the earth. And so it looks like this is following 5th seal tribulation, 6th seal rapture. So the 5th seal being the tribulation period makes me think that seals 1 through 4 are preparing the entire world for the Antichrist tribulation time frame. And so you guys have probably heard me explaining the white horseman looks like it's going forth to do a conquering, possibly a political, even a broad spectrum conquering of the world, bringing it toward a situation where the Antichrist could come in. And we've really been seeing that happen in the last few decades. We've been seeing it with politics and banking and with wars as a huge part. And as I've discussed before, it appears to be a huge escalation of this since September of 2001. And that huge event, which was a lie to the populace of the world about what was really going on there. The 2nd seal is this red horseman that's being described, taking peace from the earth, killing one another, and a great sword. So I just have some questions that, as soon as, for example, on your white horseman, if that was like the great time of war on terror, which really changed the world in so many ways, especially with banking and politics. It changed the world with privacy and being able to reach in and take over the little man, the common man no longer having power being given to bigger governments, which all of these steps are very important to usher in Antichrist system. And so that part has started. I just see how that could easily be at least an escalation of the conquering part. The conquering part may have been going on for decades and decades by now, but your red horseman, it's just interesting to notice that in 2011, which was 10 years after the 2001 event, 10 years later, there was another fake announcement that Osama bin Laden died. He suddenly died at that time, and no one was able to see any evidence of it, of course, very conveniently, with people even being conveniently taken out of the way so that they could never be called to witness of what they actually saw when this death supposedly happened. But notice that would be like a sign of the ending of the terror, and what comes right behind it is a new spring with terrorist groups that have swords or worship a great sword. And that was used to bring in this time of killing and murder, and of course in the West we didn't see a lot of that. You had to really pay attention to alternate news to see how bloody and how vicious, and that was an entire world movement. It's something to look at. It may not be the red horseman, but these patterns are something to look at. It was a big deal. And I've discussed this in other videos if you want to go and find that in some of my playlists. But now what I find very interesting is about 8 years later, I don't know if this is going to be like the birth pangs, like the first horseman is 10 years, the next one's about 9, the next one will be about 8, maybe the next one about 6 years, I don't know. Maybe they will overlap, maybe they have been overlapping. But if you notice, about 8 years after this 2011 announcement of the fake death that ended the white horseman, you have the announcement that ISIS is defeated, the Great Sword is defeated, and right behind that, the very next month or two, you had these huge collapses and protests of the economic systems of the world that could point at possible Black Horseman events beginning. And I've speculated that we may see a peak of the Black Horseman events peaking about 2021. Just something to be aware of. That was an interesting sign to me, because as far as the protesting of economic problems and the exposure of economic problems with huge collapses, that was going on before they announced ISIS defeated. But these things kind of overlapped, and it did overlap pretty tightly, because if you go a few years back, there were a lot of signs. You can go about 4 years back and you can see a lot of bail-ins and bailouts and a lot of serious economic shaking. But maybe we won't enter the time of the serious restrictions that it lists here with food even. It says, when it's describing the third seal with the black horse, it says he has a pair of balances in his hand, and they're talking about a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny, and hurt not the oil and wine. It's talking about economics and food. Of course, that would be a huge part of the collapse that would force everyone into a global system of a global currency, a global economic system. That would be a huge part of moving toward the Antichrist system. But we also see threats of war building up, which would be the Pale Horseman right behind the black, which the Pale Horseman includes several components. But that would be later, maybe even shortly later, because it may be like the birth pang effect of shorter and shorter. But this video was about the Black Horseman because I'm very curious how close we are, that not only has this economic manipulation been ongoing for years, are we about to see the major move of it? And after they've taken so much control over politics and people's rights, it will be that much easier to go in and force people to move to more of a global system. And so here it looks like they got like a head start on the food issue by introducing the virus problems. And that way they could start locking in their control kind of early. The virus was actually released about 6 months after I made this video. The reason I believe for doing that is that would do a much better job of locking in control ahead of time before the imminent food crisis that no one can control, if anything like this did happen. But another huge coincidence that I'm seeing is that I'm about to attend a conference that's going to speak a lot about the weather changes and different other signs of the end times, and I'll be sharing all of that with y'all as soon as I can. But a lot of the weather changes that you guys may be noticing that have been predicted is that we're supposed to be seeing a lot more wind and a lot more water in a lot of places, and you can see that it's like massive flooding everywhere in the states where a lot of crops are grown. And I'm not sure how much flooding is going on in other countries, or if they would even hide that information where it comes to interrupting the crop cycles. So since I went to that conference and since I reported all this, there have been massive snowmageddons worldwide, snows out of season, droughts, locust swarms, and wildfires such as the wildfire of Australia. Of course, increasing food collapse and issues, and everything's been hidden on mainstream media because, of course, all Bible prophecy is going to be hidden from us or shown as something else that it's not. So this could be another sign of why the food would be affected, perhaps. And this could be more like a natural event, too, of a natural event that would be taken advantage of, perhaps, unfortunately. So now I'm asking, why are the same people who introduced the shots and the virus and the health emergency of 2020, why are they now purchasing large tracts of farmland everywhere? And I believe they're preparing, of course, for the coming food crisis. And the way they can get away with just announcing it openly in front of everyone's face is that we're kind of in a season of all sorts of crisis at the same time. and no one's really connecting the dots of exactly where we are in prophecy and proving that it is Bible prophecy, of course, except true believers who are going to believe no matter what. To go ahead and help move things in that direction toward a consolidation and takeover for globalist purposes. So that's kind of the update I have, is are we entering the Black Horseman of the Apocalypse? So signs that I would look out for is more economic problems and food shortage problems. Possibly these weather changes are feeding into it. I believe there's nothing anywhere prophetically in the verses that I've ever read that say that we cannot start seeing these seals being opened before the Antichrist appears, before the tribulation period, or before a rapture. There's nothing that says that anywhere. And feel free to read and do the search for yourself, but just keep in mind, is there anything that would prevent these first seals from opening before a rapture? Anything at all? And there really is nothing. And I don't say that to be argumentative as much as I say to be aware. This is to try to help you and just be aware of what may be going on. And it also matches the other signs we're seeing of the peace treaty being made with Israel, or trying to be made, which at the same time massive war is stirring up, which I sort of predicted on my last prophecy video of, since they're trying to make a peace deal, watch out for increased tension and strife. Some of that would be natural because of the conflicts of trying to make such a deal, and some of it would be possibly deliberately started in order to influence politics a certain way. All of the war set up in Israel that has been happening since the Arab Springtime of 2011, which I believe was the second seal opening, I believe that's going to be mostly hype. I hope it doesn't go into real war, and that's not part of the fourth seal. Anything that we hear as far as extreme rumors of war and scare tactics could very likely be the preparation for a savior situation to come in and offer an answer of peace from the very wars that they're stirring up behind the scenes in the first place. And so this is where we could see a possible tremendous great deception of the end times. Possibly one of the deceptions that, if possible, would deceive the very elect of alien saviors. The lie that they put us here on earth and they're coming back to save us from our danger, that we're endangering ourselves with all these wars. And I add again, the very wars that they stirred up in the first place, to make people more desperate and make people willing to make certain deals and certain parts of the deals that they may not otherwise make. If they weren't under such a threat of imminent drastic war, it's a really bad situation. I would say pray for everyone to have peace and for lives to be spared and for people to have every chance to be saved while they can. The rumor is that the peace deal was going to be announced after Ramadan, which is ongoing now, the Muslim practice of Ramadan, which I believe ends in about another 3 weeks to a month. And so that's when the peace deal was going to be announced. So watch out for any kind of political or war maneuvers happening there. And watch out for any fake events that were lied to about, because Steve Bendanoon on Israeli News Live received information that there was going to be a setup of a U.S. ship being attacked to draw us into a war. Things like this are going on. The Bible has prophesied wars and rumors of wars. The only reason I bring that up is to not become emotionally invested or conflicted, or be aware that you may be emotionally manipulated during a war like this, that you may take the wrong side very easily and be lied to by any side. You could be lied to by any side in the situation because you're thinking you're on the right side and the side of God, but the deep state elements that may be running that side will have you fooled into thinking you're taking the right side whenever you're following a lie. The important thing I always remember with these kind of wars is to not get emotional and to not get caught up, and not to assume that I understand that everything that's going on with the politics of the situation. Pray for peace, pray for souls, and to be watching out for these signs of prophecy being fulfilled. The only reason I bring up this Israeli part is to explain that with all this talk of peace treaties and third temple that's in there that everyone's talking about, everyone's anticipating and hoping, a lot of people are hoping and wishing for a third temple to be built as part of the outcome of a peace treaty. This is more of signs. It may be 10 or 20 years before any of this happens, but we've never had a talk of this that so escalated until recently. So it's one more sign that we probably are in these times. There's nothing that says these seals can't be opened, and we may be staring at the black horseman of the apocalypse dead ahead. So right on schedule. The virus was released 6 months after this video originally aired. And if we see a food crisis unfolding in the coming years, like within the coming 5 years, even though all this may be blamed on supply chain issues, wars, virus issues, blocking everything up, and so-called global warming, the true cause will be prophetic weather changes from outside of the earth, which are the powers of heaven shaking, mentioned in Luke chapter 21 of the end times. So that's why I would interpret any coming food issues and rationing, especially extreme ones that require meat replacements or rationing. That's going to be my confirmation that the third seal of Revelation is actually opened, and that's exactly where we are in Bible prophecy.